All right, let's unpack this. We're diving deep into Oil Rig Motorhand interview prep today. So you got the pretty big goals, and we're here to help you kind of hit that oil well of confidence. We're using resources from RoleCatcher, which is like a super-powered toolkit for your job hunt, career guides, interview tips, even AI that helps you nail those tricky questions.
What's really impressive about RoleCatcher is it doesn't just give you general advice, it actually helps you tailor your responses to each specific company and job that you're applying for.
Exactly. It's all about showing them you're not just qualified,
hmm
but you're the perfect fit for their team and their rig. So let's start by understanding what an oil rig motor hand actually does. Sometimes people think it's just about engines, but it's way more than that, right?
Absolutely. Think of an oil rig motor hand as the master of machines. You're responsible for keeping all the rig equipment running smoothly. From the massive drawworks that lift and lower the drill pipe, to the pumps that circulate drilling fluids, to the generators that power the entire operation.
Wow. So it's like being the chief mechanic for a whole mini city out there in the ocean.
Exactly. It's a huge responsibility, which is why these interviews are so intense. They want to make sure you've got the skills, the knowledge, and the right mindset for this challenging environment.
Speaking of intense, let's dive into some of those tough interview questions, starting with a classic. What inspired you to become an oil rig motor hand?
This one is all about showing your passion and dedication. Avoid generic answers like good salary or job security. Think about what truly drew you to this field. Maybe you're fascinated by the complexity of the machinery. Maybe you love the hands-on problem solving. Or maybe it's the challenge of working in such a demanding environment.
And don't be afraid to tell a story.
Hmm.
Maybe you grew up tinkering with engines in your dad's garage. Or maybe you were always drawn to the idea of working offshore. A personal touch can really make your answer stand out.
Absolutely. And you know what's cool? RoleCatcher's AI can actually analyze your response and give you feedback on how to make it even stronger. It can even help you tailor your answer to the specific company you're interviewing with.
So if the company website emphasizes teamwork, the AI might suggest you highlight your experience collaborating with other mechanics on complex repairs.
Exactly. It's like having a personal interview coach in your pocket, helping you craft the perfect response. Now let's move on to another crucial question. How do you ensure the safety of yourself and your colleagues while working on an oil rig?
Okay, this one is huge, right? We're talking about a high-risk environment where safety is absolutely paramount.
You're right. The interviewer wants to see that you not only know the safety protocols, but that you live and breathe them. Don't just rattle off a list of rules. Instead, show them you understand why those rules exist and how they apply to specific situations on the rig.
For example, you could talk about lockout, hagout procedures for isolating energy sources before doing any maintenance work. Or you can mention the importance of wearing personal protective equipment, like hard hats, safety glasses, and steel-toe boots at all times.
Right. And be specific. Instead of saying, I always follow safety procedures, you could say, before operating any equipment, I always conduct a pre-start inspection to ensure everything is in working order and that all safety guards are in place. And I always double check with my colleagues to make sure we're all clear on the task and the associated safety protocols.
That level of detail shows them you're not just saying the right things. You're actually thinking about safety in a practical, hands-on way. And here's a potential follow-up question they might ask. Can you give me an example of a time you identified a safety hazard on a rig and what steps you took to address it?
That's a great one. They want to see that you're proactive and that you're not afraid to speak up if you see something that could put yourself or your colleagues at risk.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the work environment itself. The career guide describes it as challenging, with long hours, extreme temperatures, and constant noise. They might ask, how do you handle the pressure and stress of working in such a demanding environment?
This one is all about showing them you can stay cool under pressure. Oil rig work can be intense, and they need to know you can handle the heat, both literally and figuratively.
So don't just say, I'm good under pressure. Give them specific examples of how you manage stress in challenging situations. Maybe you take a few deep breaths to calm your nerves. Maybe you break down complex tasks into smaller, more manageable steps. Or maybe you rely on your team for support.
Right. And here's a tip. When you're practicing your answers, use RoleCatcher's AI video feedback feature. You can record yourself answering this question, and the AI will analyze your facial expressions, body language, and tone of voice to help you project confidence and composure.
So even if you're feeling nervous on the inside, you'll be cool as a cucumber on the outside. All right, let's move on to the next question, which is all about your technical expertise. What experience do you have working with drilling equipment and machinery?
This is your chance to shine. Be specific about your experience, mentioning the types of rigs you've worked on, the equipment you've operated, and the maintenance you've performed. Don't be afraid to get technical and show off your knowledge.
And here's where those certifications you've earned can really come in handy. Mention any relevant certifications you have, like welding, rigging, or hydraulics. It shows them you're committed to professional development, and you're staying up to date on the latest industry standards.
Exactly. And remember, quantify your experience whenever possible. Instead of saying, I'm familiar with hydraulic systems, you could say, I have 5 years of experience troubleshooting and repairing hydraulic systems on offshore drilling rigs.
That kind of specificity really makes your answer stand out. Now, they might follow up with a question like, can you describe a time you had to troubleshoot a complex problem on a piece of drilling equipment? What steps did you take?
This is where you can really showcase your problem-solving skills. Walk them through your thought process step by step. Explain how you diagnosed the problem, what tools and techniques you used, and how you ultimately came up with a solution.
And remember, they're not just looking for someone who can fix things. They're also looking for someone who can communicate clearly and effectively. So explain your thought process in a way that's easy for them to understand, even if they're not technical experts themselves.
Absolutely. And speaking of communication, let's move on to a question that often comes up in oil rig interviews. How do you prioritize and manage your workload in such a demanding and unpredictable environment?
Okay, this one is all about showing them you can handle the chaos. Oil rig work can be unpredictable. With emergencies and unexpected problems popping up all the time, they need to know you can stay organized, prioritize tasks, and adapt to changing circumstances.
Exactly. So talk about your time management skills, your ability to multitask, and your experience working under pressure. Maybe use a system for tracking tasks. Maybe you're a pro at delegating. Or maybe you're just really good at staying calm and focused when things get hectic.
And be ready for them to dig deeper with a follow-up question like, can you describe a time you had to juggle multiple priorities at once on a rig? How did you handle it?
That's where you can really shine. Give them a specific example of a time you had to think on your feet, make quick decisions, and keep everything running smoothly.
All right, let's move on to another question that's all about teamwork. How do you communicate effectively with your colleagues while working on an oil rig?
This one is crucial. Because on a rig, effective communication can be the difference between success and disaster. They want to see that you can express yourself clearly, listen attentively, and collaborate effectively with your team, even in a noisy and chaotic environment.
Right. It's not just about giving orders or barking instructions. It's about being a good listener, being respectful of others' opinions, and being able to explain technical concepts in a way that everyone can understand.
And don't forget about nonverbal communication. On a rig, hand signals and body language can be just as important as words.
Exactly. And be ready for them to ask you to give a specific example of a time you had to communicate effectively in a challenging situation on a rig.
That's where you can really bring your communication skills to life.
Now let's move on to a question that shows you're not just a gearhead, but you also understand the bigger picture. How do you ensure you're compliant with environmental regulations while working on an oil rig?
This one demonstrates that you're not just focused on keeping the machinery running, but you're also aware of the potential environmental impact of oil and gas operations. They want to see that you take environmental responsibility seriously.
Right, so don't just give a vague answer like, I follow all the rules. Be specific about the types of environmental regulations you're familiar with, like those related to waste management, emissions control, and protecting marine life.
And here's where RoleCatcher's AI can be incredibly helpful. You can actually use it to research the specific environmental regulations relevant to the company and location you're interviewing with, allowing you to tailor your answer to their specific needs.
That level of preparation shows them you're going the extra mile, and you're serious about this job.
Okay, let's tackle another important question. What steps do you take to ensure that equipment is properly maintained and functioning correctly?
This one is all about showing them you're proactive, not just reactive. They want to see that you understand the importance of preventative maintenance and have a systematic approach to keeping the rig running smoothly.
Exactly. Talk about the steps you take to inspect equipment, identify potential issues, and perform routine maintenance tasks. Do you have a checklist you follow? Do you use any specialized diagnostic tools?
And don't be afraid to get into the nitty-gritty details. They want to see that you have a deep understanding of how the equipment works and what it takes to keep it running smoothly.
Right. And be prepared to discuss specific examples of preventative maintenance tasks you've performed in the past, like lubricating bearings, changing filters, or inspecting hydraulic systems. And here's a potential follow-up question they might ask. Can you tell me about a time you had to make a difficult decision regarding equipment maintenance? What factors did you consider?
That's a good one. They want to see that you can think critically, weigh different options, and make sound decisions even when facing time constraints or budget limitations.
Exactly. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about career progression. The career guide outlines the typical path for an oil rig motorhand, starting from entry level and moving up to senior motorhand.
So, someone just starting out might assist more experienced motorhands with routine tasks, gradually taking on more responsibility as they gain experience. Eventually, they could be leading a team of their own, overseeing major projects.
Precisely. And this career path is something you can leverage in the interview. It shows you're thinking long term and are invested in this career.
So if they ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You could say, I'm eager to learn and grow within this company. I see myself progressing to a senior motorhand role, using my expertise to mentor others and contribute to even more complex projects.
That's great. It shows ambition and aligns your goals with their company structure. Now let's address a question that often makes people nervous. What are your salary expectations?
Oh, yeah, this one can be tricky. You want to be realistic, but you also don't want to undersell yourself.
Exactly. The key is to do your research beforehand. Know the average salary range for oil rig motorhands in your location, considering your experience and certifications.
And instead of throwing out a specific number right away, try to deflect the question a bit and gather more information. You could say something like, I'm very interested in the role and confident my skills would be valuable to your team. To discuss salary fairly, could you tell me more about the typical range for this position?
That's a great approach. It shows you're more focused on the opportunity than just the paycheck. But you're also prepared to discuss compensation in a professional manner. Now let's talk about a question that gives you a chance to shine. Do you have any questions for me?
This is where you flip the script and become the interviewer. It shows you're engaged, curious, and thinking critically about the opportunity.
Exactly. Avoid generic questions like, what are the benefits? Instead, ask questions that dig deeper into the company culture, the team dynamics, the specific challenges of the role, or the company's vision for the future.
For example, you could ask, what are some of the biggest initiatives the rig operations team is currently working on? Or, how does the company support professional development and continuing education for its employees?
Those are great examples. It shows you're thinking beyond just getting the job and are interested in long-term growth within the company.
Okay, now we've covered a lot of the common interview questions. But there might be some curveballs thrown your way. Remember, oil rig work is all about problem solving, so they might try to assess those skills in different ways.
Absolutely. They might ask something like, describe a time you had to make a difficult decision under pressure on a rig. How did you approach the situation?
This is where the STAR method comes in handy. Describe the situation, the task, the action you took, and the result you achieved. It helps structure your answer and ensures you cover all the important points.
Right. And be sure to choose a situation that highlights your ability to think critically, stay calm under pressure, and ultimately make the best decision for the safety of the crew and the success of the operation.
Now let's talk about something that's often overlooked in interview prep, but it's crucial for an oil rig motorhand role. Physical endurance and mental toughness, they might ask. How do you stay physically and mentally fit for the demands of working on a rig?
This question is about more than just lifting weights or running a marathon. It's about demonstrating that you understand the unique challenges of this environment, the long hours, the harsh weather conditions, the physical labor, and the mental strain of being away from home for extended periods.
So you could talk about your commitment to staying in shape, maybe through regular exercise or activities that simulate the physical demands of the job.
Right. You could also mention strategies for maintaining mental well-being, like staying connected with loved ones, practicing mindfulness techniques, or having hobbies that help you de-stress.
And here's where you can tie it back to teamwork. You can say something like, I believe in supporting my colleagues, both physically and mentally. We're all in this together, and we need to look out for each other to stay safe and productive.
That's a great point. It shows you understand the importance of camaraderie and teamwork in this demanding environment. Now let's talk about another aspect of oil rig work that requires a certain mindset. Adaptability, they might ask. How do you handle changes in procedures or priorities? especially in a fast-paced environment where things can change quickly.
This one is all about showing them you're flexible. You can think on your feet, and you're not afraid of a challenge. Oil rigs are dynamic environments, and things can change rapidly due to weather conditions, equipment malfunctions, or new discoveries.
Exactly. So give them a specific example of a time you had to adapt to a sudden change on a rig. Maybe a storm rolled in and you had to secure the equipment. Maybe a critical component failed and you had to improvise a solution. Or maybe the drilling plan changed and you had to adjust your workflow.
And don't just focus on the technical aspects. Talk about the communication and teamwork involved.
Mhm.
Did you have to coordinate with other departments? Did you have to explain the situation to less experienced crew members?
Right. Highlighting those interpersonal skills shows them you're a well-rounded individual who can handle not just the technical aspects of the job, but also the human element.
Now, here's a question that often trips people up. What are your weaknesses?
Hmm.
It feels like a trap, right?
It can be, but it's also an opportunity to demonstrate self-awareness and a commitment to growth. The key is to choose a weakness that is relevant to the job, but not a deal breaker. And most importantly, explain how you're actively working to improve.
For example, you could say, I sometimes get so focused on the task at hand that I forget to take breaks and pace myself, which can lead to fatigue. To address this, I've been incorporating mindfulness techniques into my routine to help me stay aware of my energy levels and take breaks when needed.
That's a great example. It shows you're honest about your weaknesses, but you're also taking proactive steps to address them.
Now let's tackle another tricky question. Tell me about a time you made a mistake at work. How did you handle it?
Everyone makes mistakes, especially in a high-pressure environment like an oil rig. What they're really interested in is your accountability, your problem-solving skills, and your ability to learn from your experiences.
So how do you choose the right mistake to talk about?
Choose a mistake that was significant enough to be memorable, but not something that would raise major red flags about your competence or safety practices. And focus on the lessons you learned and the steps you took to prevent similar mistakes in the future.
For example, you could say, I once miscalculated a fuel mixture for one of the generators, which caused a temporary power outage. I immediately reported the mistake to my supervisor and worked with the team to restore power quickly to prevent similar errors in the future. I developed a double-check system for all fuel calculations.
That shows them that you're not afraid to take responsibility for your actions, that you're proactive in problem solving, and that you're committed to continuous improvement. Now, they might follow up by asking, looking back, what would you do differently in that situation?
This is where you can really showcase your growth mindset. Reflect on what you learned from the experience and how you've applied those lessons to your work since then.
Exactly. It's about showing them you're not just someone who can fix things, but you're also someone who can learn and grow from their mistakes.
Okay, let's shift gears again and talk about a question that's almost guaranteed to come up in an oil rig interview. Describe a time you had to work effectively as part of a team to achieve a common goal.
Teamwork is essential on an oil rig, and they want to see that you can collaborate effectively, communicate clearly, and contribute to a positive team dynamic.
So how do you choose the right team experience to share?
Choose a situation that involved a challenging goal, diverse perspectives, and the need for effective communication and collaboration, and highlight your specific role in the team's success.
For example, you could say, we were tasked with replacing a major component on the drilling rig within a tight time frame to minimize downtime. I worked closely with the other motor hands and the rig crew to coordinate the lift, install the new component, and test the system thoroughly. We encountered some unexpected obstacles, but we communicated clearly, adapted our plan as needed, and ultimately completed the task ahead of schedule.
That shows them that you can work effectively as part of a team, overcome challenges, and contribute to achieving shared goals. They might also ask, what was the biggest challenge you faced as a team, and how did you overcome it?
That's a great opportunity to talk about conflict resolution, adaptability, and your ability to work under pressure.
Exactly. Highlight how you contributed to finding a solution, and how the team learned and grew from the experience.
Now let's tackle another question that often comes up. Why should we hire you for this position?
This is your chance to summarize your qualifications, highlight your key strengths, and reiterate your enthusiasm for the role. It's your closing argument, so make it count.
So how do you make sure your answer stands out from the crowd?
Tie your skills and experience directly to the specific requirements of the job. Don't just list your qualifications. Explain how they make you the ideal candidate for this particular role.
For example, you could say, you're looking for someone with a strong mechanical aptitude. a proven track record in rig maintenance, and a deep commitment to safety. I have over 5 years of experience working on offshore drilling rigs. I've consistently exceeded expectations in my previous roles, and I've never had a safety violation. I'm passionate about this industry, and I'm confident that I have the skills and the drive to be a valuable asset to your team.
That's a powerful way to connect the dots and leave them with a lasting impression of your qualifications and your enthusiasm. They might also ask, what sets you apart from other candidates for this role?
This is where you can really highlight your unique strengths, experiences, or personality traits that make you a perfect fit for their team.
Exactly. It's about showing them that you're not just qualified, you're the best person for the job.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into interview questions. But before we wrap up, let's talk about a few other important things to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Preparation is key. The more you practice, the more confident and articulate you'll be during the interview.
Right. And don't underestimate the power of nonverbal communication. Make eye contact, smile, sit up straight, and project confidence and enthusiasm. And remember, they're not just assessing your technical skills. They're also trying to gauge your personality and whether you'd be a good fit for their team.
Exactly. They want to see that you're not just a competent mechanic, but you're also a reliable, responsible, and personable individual who can thrive in a demanding and collaborative environment.
Now, we've talked a lot about how to answer interview questions, but let's switch gears and talk about how to ask questions. Remember, do you have any questions for me? Part of the interview is your chance to show them you're curious, you're engaged, and you've been paying attention.
Absolutely. And the questions you ask can reveal a lot about your priorities, your values, and your understanding of the industry.
So what are some good questions to ask in an oil rig motorhand interview?
Well, you could ask about the company's safety culture, their training programs, their approach to maintenance, or their plans for future growth. You could also ask about the team dynamics, the leadership style, or the opportunities for advancement.
And don't be afraid to ask about the challenges of the role. It shows that you're realistic and you're not afraid of hard work.
Exactly. For example, you could ask, what are some of the biggest challenges facing the rig operations team right now? Or, what are the company's priorities when it comes to balancing safety and efficiency?
Those are great questions. They show that you're thinking critically about the role and you're genuinely interested in contributing to the team's success. And here's a tip. Take notes throughout the interview and use those notes to formulate your questions. It shows that you're actively listening and that you're genuinely interested in what they have to say.
Now let's talk about something that can really help you stand out from the competition. Researching the company.
This is so important. It shows the interviewer that you're serious about the opportunity and that you've taken the time to learn about their organization.
Right. It's like showing up for a first date, having read their favorite book and watched their favorite movie. It shows you care.
Exactly. So where do you start?
Well, the company website is a great place to begin. Look at their mission statement, their values, their history, their current projects. Get a sense of their overall goals and priorities.
And don't just skim the surface. Dig deeper. Look at their annual reports, their press releases, their social media presence.
Right. You can also search for news articles or industry reports that mention the company. See what their competitors are saying about them. And don't forget about LinkedIn. Connect with people who work at the company, especially those in the department you're interviewing for. You can learn a lot from their profiles and their connections.
So what kind of information should you be looking for?
Well, first and foremost, understand their core business. What do they specialize in? What are their key markets? What are their competitive advantages?
Right. Because you want to be able to talk intelligently about their business and how your skills and experience align with their needs.
You should also get a sense of their company culture. Are they formal or informal? Hierarchical or flat? Do they emphasize teamwork or individual achievement?
That information can help you tailor your interview responses and your overall presentation.
And finally, try to understand their current challenges and opportunities. What are the biggest issues facing the company right now? What are their growth plans?
That shows the interviewer that you're thinking strategically and that you're interested in contributing to the company's success.
And here's a great tip. Use what you've learned about the company to formulate specific questions to ask the interviewer. For example, you could say, I read about your company's recent investment in new drilling technology. Can you tell me more about how that's impacting the rig operations team?
That shows that you've done your homework and that you're genuinely interested in the company's future. Now let's talk about something that can be a real game changer in your interview prep. RoleCatcher's AI-powered tools.
Absolutely. RoleCatcher goes beyond just providing generic advice. It uses AI to analyze job descriptions, identify key skills and qualifications, and then tailor your responses to each specific company and role you're applying for.
So it's like having a personal career coach who knows exactly what each employer is looking for.
Exactly. For example, if the job description emphasizes troubleshooting skills, RoleCatcher's AI will suggest interview questions that target those specific skills.
So instead of just practicing general problem-solving questions, I'm getting hyper-relevant practice that's tailored to the job I'm actually applying for.
Precisely. And it goes beyond that. Remember those career stages from the career guide? RoleCatcher's AI tailors its suggestions based on where you are in your career.
Here's where it gets really interesting. So if I'm aiming for that senior motorhand role, the AI will throw tougher leadership and management questions my way.
You got it. It's like having a personalized training program that constantly adjusts to your goals. And the feedback, it's not just good job, try again. It's specific and actionable.
Like, Deuce, you nailed the technical details, but try adding an example of how you mentored a junior team member. That kind of thing.
Spot on. It helps you refine not just what you say, but how you say it, so that confidence and leadership shine through.
Okay, so RoleCatcher can help me tailor my answers to each specific company and role. But what about my overall interview skills?
RoleCatcher's got you covered there too. Remember that video feedback feature we talked about earlier? You can use it to practice your answers to common interview questions, and the AI will analyze your facial expressions, body language, and tone of voice to give you tips on how to project confidence and composure.
So it's like having a virtual interview coach who can help me polish my delivery and make sure I'm making a great impression.
Exactly. And the best part is, you can practice as much as you need to until you feel completely comfortable and confident.
Okay, that's pretty amazing. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, but let's recap some of the key takeaways.
Absolutely. First and foremost, preparation is key. The more you research the company, practice your answers, and understand the nuances of the oil rig motorhand role, the more confident and articulate you'll be during the interview.
Right. And don't underestimate the power of those soft skills. Teamwork, communication, adaptability, problem solving, and a strong work ethic are all essential for success in this demanding environment.
And remember, the interview is a two-way street. It's not just about them evaluating you, it's also about you evaluating them. Ask thoughtful questions, gather information about the company culture, and make sure it's a place where you can thrive and grow.
Exactly. And if you're feeling overwhelmed by all this information, don't worry. Platforms like RoleCatcher can be your secret weapon throughout the entire job search process.
That's right. From finding the right opportunities to crafting winning applications to acing those interviews, RoleCatcher has the tools and resources to help you succeed. So take a deep breath, believe in yourself, and go knock those socks off in that interview.
You got this. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, let's take a moment to acknowledge that this is just one step in a much larger journey.
That's a great point. Landing the job is a fantastic achievement, but it's just the beginning. What comes next is building a successful and fulfilling career in this demanding and rewarding industry.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about what it takes to thrive as an oil rig motorhand once you've landed the job.
Absolutely. So you've aced the interview, you've got the job offer, and you're about to embark on this exciting new chapter in your career. What are some key things to keep in mind as you step onto that rig for the first time?
So we talked about the role, the interview, and what it takes to thrive on the rig. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I kind of want to touch on something we haven't discussed yet. What about those first few days and weeks on the job? It's a whole new world out there on a rig.
Okay.
And it can be, a bit overwhelming at first.
That's a great point. It's one thing to prepare for an interview, but it's another thing to actually step onto that rig and put all that knowledge into practice.
Exactly. So what are some things you wish someone had told you before you started out as an oil rig motorhand? What are some tips for navigating those early days and making a good impression?
Well, first and foremost, be humble and be eager to learn. You might have aced the interview and impressed them with your technical knowledge, but remember, you're still a rookie on the rig. There's a whole lot of unwritten knowledge and practical experience that you can only gain by being out there, getting your hands dirty, and learning from the veterans.
Go leave that ego on shore and be ready to soak up everything you can from the more experienced crew members.
Exactly. Ask questions even if they seem basic. Observe how the seasoned motorhands approach their work. Pay attention to the details. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, as long as you learn from them.
Speaking of mistakes, I imagine there's a certain tolerance for them in those early days, right?
Yeah.
I mean, nobody expects a rookie to know everything right off the bat.
That's true. But it's important to show that you're taking your job seriously, that you're paying attention to detail, and that you're committed to doing things the right way.
So even if you don't know something, show initiative by asking for help, clarifying instructions, and double-checking your work.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to admit when you've made a mistake. It shows integrity and a willingness to learn. Just make sure you own up to it, learn from it, and take steps to avoid repeating it.
Now, we've talked a lot about the technical aspects of the job, but what about the social dynamics? What are some tips for fitting in with the crew? And building those relationships that are so important for teamwork and morale.
That's a great question. Remember, you're not just joining a work crew, you're joining a community. These guys live and work together for weeks or even months at a time, so those bonds are incredibly strong.
So it's like a family out there.
In many ways, yes. So be respectful, be friendly, be willing to pitch in and help out, even with tasks that aren't technically in your job description.
So even if I'm the motor hand, I shouldn't be afraid to grab a mock or help out in the galley if needed.
Exactly. It shows that you're a team player, and you're willing to do whatever it takes to keep things running smoothly. And don't underestimate the power of small gestures, like offering to grab coffee for the crew or sharing snacks. It's those little things that can help you build rapport and create a more positive work environment.
Now let's talk about something that can be a bit of a culture shock for people new to oil rig life. Being away from home for extended periods, it's not for everyone, and it can take a toll on your personal life and your mental well-being.
Absolutely. It's important to be mentally prepared for the isolation, the long hours, and the separation from loved ones.
So what are some things you can do to cope with those challenges and stay mentally healthy while you're out on the rig?
Well, first and foremost, stay connected with your loved ones back home. Technology has made it easier than ever to stay in touch, so make sure you're making time for phone calls, video chats, and emails.
Right. And don't underestimate the power of old-fashioned letter writing. Getting a handwritten letter from a loved one can really brighten your day when you're feeling homesick.
Absolutely. And make sure you're taking care of yourself physically. Get enough sleep, eat healthy foods, exercise regularly, and find ways to de-stress, whether it's reading, listening to music, or watching movies.
And I imagine there are opportunities for socializing and recreation on the rig, right?
Definitely. Most rigs have common areas where the crew can relax, watch movies, play games, or just hang out and talk.
So it's not all work and no play?
Exactly. It's important to find that balance and make time for activities that help you unwind and recharge.
Now let's talk about something that could be a bit sensitive, but it's important to address. Dealing with conflict on the rig. When you're living and working in close quarters with the same people for weeks on end, conflicts are bound to arise.
Absolutely. It's important to remember that conflict is a natural part of any human interaction, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. What matters is how you handle it.
So what are some tips for resolving conflicts constructively and maintaining a positive work environment?
Well, first and foremost, communicate openly and respectfully. Listen to the other person's perspective. Try to understand their point of view, and avoid getting defensive or confrontational.
Right, because the goal is to find a solution that works for everyone, not to win an argument or prove someone wrong.
Exactly. And remember, you're all part of the same team, and you need to work together to achieve common goals. So focus on finding common ground, compromise where possible, and strive to maintain a positive and collaborative work environment.
Now let's talk about something that's crucial for long-term success in any career, but especially in a demanding field like oil and gas: setting goals and staying motivated. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day grind and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Absolutely. It's important to have both short-term and long-term goals. Short-term goals might include mastering a particular skill, taking on a new responsibility, or earning a certification.
And those short-term goals can contribute to larger, long-term goals, like advancing to a senior motorhand position, specializing in a particular area of rig operations, or even transitioning into a management role.
Exactly. And remember, RoleCatcher can be a valuable resource for setting goals and tracking your progress. You can use it to identify skills you need to develop, find relevant training programs, and connect with mentors who can guide you along your career path.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Into the world of oil rig motorhands, we've talked about everything from acing the interview to thriving on the rig, to setting goals and staying motivated.
And we've also highlighted the importance of safety, teamwork, continuous learning, and taking care of your physical and mental well-being.
It's a challenging career path, but it's also incredibly rewarding. You're contributing to a vital industry. You're working with cutting-edge technology. You're constantly learning and growing. And you're part of a team that relies on each other to achieve ambitious goals.
If you're fascinated by powerful machinery, you thrive in demanding environments, and you're ready for a career that will push you to your limits and reward you with incredible experiences, then the Oil Rig Motorhand path might be the perfect fit for you.
And remember, platforms like RoleCatcher can be your partner in success throughout your entire career journey, from finding the right opportunities to crafting winning applications to preparing for interviews, and even advancing your career once you've landed the job. RoleCatcher has the tools and resources to help you every step of the way.
So if you're serious about a career as an Oil Rig Motorhand, check out RoleCatcher and see how they can help you achieve your goals. Good luck, you've got this.
Absolutely. Go out there, ace that interview, and embark on this incredible adventure. We're rooting for you.